Greek mythology, check. Norse mythology, check. Ancient Egypt, check, as technically Kratos has traversed these golden lands on his way from ancient Greece to the Norse realms, as covered in Dark Horse's comic series, God of War: Fallen God. We have taken two in-depth looks at what Egyptian mythology may hold for Kratos, and you can view part 1 here in this card on your screen. Just make sure to come right back to this video, because next we are going to travel to ancient Japan and take a look at the rich history of gods and mythical deities from the land of the rising sun. This marks our second mythology we are taking this new video series, a series that will, in the future, cover the likes of Mayan, Celtic, and more mythologies as we take a look at the pantheons Tyr has visited and see if these lands have potential to serve as backdrops for the future of God of War. If you wouldn't mind slaying that like button due to how time intensive these videos are to make, that would be much appreciated. And with that, let's get into the basic fundamentals of Japanese mythology. It was said that chaos was all that existed at the beginning of time, and that from within, divine spirits emerged and gave birth to the earth and the sky. To populate this new mass, called Earth, a pair of gods were formed, named Izanagi and Izanami. Izanagi is the male creator deity of both creation and life, whereas Izanami is the female creator deity of both creation and death. It was said that the purpose of Izanagi and Izanami was to fill the world with life. To help them, the pair received a divine spear from the spirits, and contained within it incredible power and beauty. As the pair worked together to usher in new life to the earth, the two grew quite fond of one another and fell in love. Izanami invited Izanagi to generate an offspring to populate the land, and while her partner Izanagi agreed, what resulted from this union was, well, rather unsettling. Deformed beings with disproportionate qualities were born and happened to be the cause of a misaligned union, or to put it more simply, was the result of a woman deity, in this case Izanami, requesting the union of Izanagi. Realizing the error of their ways, Izanagi instead requested the permission of Izanami to mate, and the result of this union was not that of bringing to life deformed beings, but instead ushered in the life of numerous other gods, or in Japanese, referred to as kami. Along with the birth of these kami came the Japanese archipelago of islands that we know today as Japan. Tragedy soon befell Izanami as she perished upon giving birth to the fire kami, Kagotsuchi. As such, she was now destined to live in Yomi, the land of the dead. This realm was filled with corruption and Oni, a particularly fiendish and violent yokai. Not all is well in Yomi, as Izanagi quickly discovered when he ventured into the land of the dead to try to retrieve Izanami. Izanami had been feeding on the fruits in Yomi, leaving her body in a decomposing state, stripping her completely of her divine powers and beauty. Tied to Yomi forever, she cast out her former lover by sending an army of monsters and creatures after Izanagi. Out of desperation to seal off the evil of Yomi, Izanagi moved a massive boulder and closed off the entrance to Yomi, preventing the evil from within the Underworld to corrupt the lands that the pair had once brought to life. Out of anger and horrified at what had become of his lover, he drew his divine spear and cut up his son, Kagotsuchi, the fire kami, into pieces and threw them about the lands. It is said that the many volcanoes of Japan sprouted up where the many pieces of Kagotsuchi had landed. Now, wouldn't that be something to see in a God of War game? Moving on, Izanagi, filthy of the grime and decay from the land of the dead, decided to head to nearby waters to purge himself clean of the filth. During this moment, he wept the loss of his beloved Izanagi, and from within these tears formed the last 3 kami he created, along with various other beings in the form of yokai. From the tear of his left eye came Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, of whom radiated with bright intensity. From the tear of Izanagi's left eye emerged Amaterasu's brother, Tsukuyomi, the god of the moon. Dripping from the snot of Izanagi's nose gave birth to Susanoo, a wild and mischievous god known most for his temper and with storms. Now, let's take a closer look at the fascinating relationship between Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi and how it relates to night and day. During the early moments of their existence, it was common to see both the sun and the moon together as Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi, as there was no real distinction between night and day. One day, Amaterasu was invited to a banquet where the goddess of food, Ukemochi, would prepare the feast. Unable to attend, she had her brother Tsukuyomi attend in her stead. The food was vast and colorful, representing a diverse amount of fruit and vegetables that was a proper assortment for a mighty feast. Intrigued at how the food goddess, Ukemochi, was procuring the food, a curious Tsukuyomi peered from behind a rock and glanced at the food goddess as she secreted various types of food from various parts of her body. You heard me right, good people. Ukemochi would pull carrots and other vegetables out of her ears, throw up rice, collect milk from her nose, and other foods from various other areas of her body. Horrified, Tsukuyomi drew his blade and chopped up the goddess into small pieces. He then took those pieces and dispersed them throughout the sky. Upon hearing what happened, Amaterasu was disgusted by her brother and cast him to the other side of the world, separating moon and sun, and thus created night and day as we have all come to know. Susanoo is a very peculiar character and an integral figure in Japanese mythology, and throughout my research for this video, I couldn't help but draw similarities between Susanoo and Loki. Pay attention to the stories I'm about to share with you to find out why, and drop some comments below to lend me your insight. With Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo taking care of the world and feeling much pride in his offspring, Izanagi was full of happiness and was delighted that Amaterasu, in particular, received the most adoration amongst the world as she filled the lands with light. Angered and affected by all the attention his sister was receiving, Susanoo did some mischievous and eyebrow-raising things, like lowering the tides of the oceans, killing off numerous fish, drying up the crops by preventing rainstorms that the food desperately needed to grow, etc. Angered and upset by the actions of his son, Izanagi questioned Susanoo why he had been misbehaving so much. Upon telling his father about his jealous fit about not having an important role to fill like his sister Amaterasu, he revealed that he wanted to go to the Underworld to spend time with his mother, Izanami. Furious with Susanoo, Izanagi cast him out, telling Susanoo never to return. Instead of heading straight for the Underworld, Susanoo went to visit Amaterasu and wreaked havoc of his own, destroying Amaterasu's palace when she was away and even accidentally killing one of the weavers responsible for the sun goddess's divine robes. Amaterasu was struck with grief and sorrow, casting herself to a cave not to return. With the other kami torturing Susanoo by cutting off his beard and hurting him, the sun goddess, blocking off the entrance to the cave with a boulder, sealed off the light to the world and ushered in a harsh winter, shrouding the landscape in darkness. It was a dark time, but with the help of the gods who had grown to adore her, assembled by the foot of the cave's entrance. Thanks to the smarts and wisdom of the wise god, Omoikane, the gods procured a brilliant mirror and fastened it to the sacred tree of Sasaki, facing the cave. Drawn to the laughter and the music of the party, Amaterasu removed the boulder and peeked out of the cave, immediately seeing her divine reflection from within the mirror. Amazed by her own beauty and the encouragement of the other kami, Amaterasu knew it was her duty to light the world once more with her divine sun, ushering in the light that restored the lands. It was at this time that a defeated and hurt Susanoo encountered a family along the shoreline, mourning the loss of members of their family. Turns out, every now and then, a terrifying dragon would arrive and take away one of the daughters of the family. All of that family's daughters were taken except for just one. Entranced by her beauty, Susanoo swore to take care of the woman and protect her from the dragon and asked the parents for their permission for him to take her as his wife. They agreed, and Susanoo prepared for battle. That dragon eventually showed up, the dragon known as Yamata no Orochi, the 8-headed dragon. To conceal his wife, Susanoo transformed her into a comb to hold up his hair and thought up a scheme to take down the mighty beast. Susanoo noticed a peasant had 8 barrels of sake sitting around nearby. Disguising himself as a peasant, Susanoo told Orochi that the sake had been set aside for the beast to consume to honor the dragon. Agreeing to drink the sake, the beast got drunk upon consuming the alcohol and lost consciousness. This was Susanoo's time to strike, and strike he did, cutting off one of the heads of Orochi. The dragon quickly regained consciousness, noticing that it was missing one of its heads. Enraged, the dragon battled Susanoo, but Susanoo's incredible agility and speed as a god of storms evaded all the attacks and cut off all the heads of Orochi in a brilliant battle. All that was left was the tail, and when Susanoo plunged his sword into the tail, his sword split apart. Baffled at why his sword got destroyed upon slicing open the beast's tail, he found within the flesh a mighty sword too divine to walk away from. Susanoo retrieved the incredible sword, known as Kusanagi, from the tail of Yamata no Orochi, and immediately knew what he had to do with it. As an apology for all the mischief he had caused earlier, he approached Amaterasu with the Kusanagi, kneeling before her, apologetic about the trouble and torment he had caused earlier. His sister accepted the sword, and Susanoo reunited with his new wife, and went on to create a brilliant palace and produced offspring of their own. Amaterasu also had many glorious children of her own. Among those offspring were the men that came to defend Japan against foreign attackers. Guided by and worshipping the sun, this was a brief introduction to the mythology behind the land of the rising sun. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed researching and creating it. Please do me a solid by liking this video if you made it this far. You are all rock stars, and I thank you all for your continued support throughout the growth of this channel. In the next video, we will be going over the potential stories Kratos and company could experience while in Japanese mythology. If you want to know more about the future of the franchise, consult this playlist here to whet your appetite before I release my next video. Thank you all for the awesome support, and I will see you real soon. Peace, good people.